Hello everyone, and welcome to the fourth lesson of the Python Fundamentals series. Let's get started. In the last two videos, we have already talked about the string, int, float, and complex data types in Python, and today we will be discussing in depth about another very important data type, which is Booleans. If you remember from the first video of this chapter, we talked about how Booleans take two possible values, either true or false, and just like their names suggest, true and false represent whether something is true or whether something is false. Looking at this code cell, we would see that the variables something true and something false are assigned the values of true and false. Those two print statements will print out the data type of those values, which we can see both true and false are of type bool, an abbreviation of Booleans in Python. Something to pay attention to when using Booleans is that Boolean values have to be capitalized. If I type, for example, a lowercase t instead of capitalized one, then we would get a name error when I run this code because Python is then looking for a variable called true since this is no longer the Python keyword for true. A common way of how Booleans are used in programming is comparison. Imagine you have two numbers, a and b, and you wish to compare them to each other. And here we can use the Python comparison operators. The double equal sign is comparing whether they are equal to each other or not. Exclamation mark equals is comparing them in a way that it will return true if they're not equal. The greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, and less than or equal to are pretty straightforward. And here's an example of how we can use these comparison operators. We have assigned the value of 34 to A and the value of 320 to B. If I run this cell, we would see that A equals B, meaning that they're equal to each other. The value is to false. Them not equaling to each other is true. This is false. This is true. This is false again. And lastly, this is true. Just like with other data types that we've talked about before, Booleans also have a special function which we can use to convert non-Booleans into Booleans, which is the bool function. If we pass in a string that is not empty, then the bool function will return true, while an empty string, regardless of whatever quotation mark we use, will be converted to false. If we pass in a number that's not 0, then it will be returned as true, while 0 in any numerical data type will be converted to false. If we pass in a Boolean value into the bool function, then that Boolean will just be returned. There are also some data types we haven't talked about that can be passed into the bool function, and in general, a sequence or mapping data type that is not empty will be converted to true, while if it is empty, then it will be converted to false. If we pass in none into the bool function, then it will be converted to false. So in short, if we pass in a into the bool function, then true will be returned unless a is empty, false, none, or 0 as a numerical data type. And now let's see the bool function in action. In this cell, we can see that 5.34, 12j, 0 as an int, and 0 as a float passed into the bool function. If I run this cell, you can see that the input that are not 0 in the numerical type returned true, while 0 returned false. In this cell, two different strings are passed into the bool function, the first of which holds a value of string and the second one is just an empty string. Running the cell, we can see that the non-empty string returned true, while the empty string simply returned false. And here are some data types we haven't talked about before, which don't worry if you don't understand what these are, but we have a list, a tuple, a dictionary, and a non-type here. And if I run this cell, you'll see that the sequence data types and mapping data types that are not empty all returned true as the first three examples, and the empty ones returned false, while the none simply returned false. The last thing that we'll be talking about today in this video is going to be the Boolean operators in Python. Using Boolean operators, we can combine multiple conditions into one single Boolean, or we can modify the evaluation of a Boolean. These are the three different Boolean operators in Python. first of which is the AND operator. With the AND operator, we need both sides of the AND operator to be true to evaluate to true. With the OR operator, one or both sides of the operator needs to be true for the whole evaluation to be true. And the NOT operator simply inverts the Boolean that comes afterward, so it will return true if the original Boolean is false and false if the original one is true. And here are some examples, the first of which is with AND. If both sides of the AND operator are true, then it's going to return obviously true. And if one side is true and the other side is false, then it's going to return false. And if both sides are false, it's going to return false. With the OR operator, we can see that if both sides are true, then it's going to return true. And if one side is false and the other side is true, then it's going to also return true because the OR operator simply needs one side to be true for the whole evaluation to be true. And if both sides are false, then it's going to evaluate to false. The NOT operator here, we can see that originally we have a true Boolean, but using the NOT operator, we can change it to false, and the same story with the second line of code here. With longer Boolean expressions, we can change the order of how evaluation goes by using parentheses. For instance, in this cell, this OR expression is wrapped up in a parentheses, meaning this is going to be evaluated first. And 4 == 4 is going to be evaluated to true, and so is this side, which means that this entire OR expression will be true. And this is going to be false, and therefore true and false is going to evaluate to false, which you can see printed out right here. And here, this part of the expression, the AND expression, is going to be evaluated first since it's in parentheses. And it's going to be, this is going to be true and this is going to be false, meaning that the entire part of the expression is going to be false. But however, because this is an OR operation, true or false is going to give us true, as you can see right here. To summarize the lesson today, we talked about some of the more advanced features when dealing with Python Booleans. And we talked about comparing values in Python using Booleans. We talked about how we can use the bool function to convert non-Booleans into Booleans, as well as the Boolean operators AND, OR, and NOT.
And that will be it for this video. As always, if you have any questions or concerns, please leave them down below in the comments so I can do my best to help you. With that said, thank you for watching and I'll see you in my next video.